Lulla with Andrew Rogers. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter and YouTube as well. And we are brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center with 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been voted best of Omaha first place 18 years in a row. Family owned and operated in Omaha for over 25 years. They've got all the latest technologies to work on the whatever make and model that you've got to bring them over there. And they invest in the community as well with their give back program, giving back to the community with every car repaired. Go check them out at dingmans.com. Andrew, I wanted to get to some of the comments that the Nebraska coaches have made over the last few days. There's been a lot. You heard Tony White there as we were coming back. There's been a lot that the coordinator said yesterday, that Coach Rule said as well in his, increasingly lengthy press conferences, which I kind of enjoy, because he actually says something. I've got this weird. I know I'm unlike most media members in the sense that I, for the most part, really don't care about press conferences because largely I don't think you get a lot out of them.
Mm-hmm.
This coaching staff, I think you actually do, especially from Rule. You get pretty good stuff. And a lot of it's him talking to his team, and a lot of it's him talking to, people other than the media. And he kind of just uses it as his pulpit a little bit to take whatever question you have and form it to whatever he wants to talk about. But I do think you actually get decent information out of it.
For both wins and losses.
Yeah.
Because normally you listen to a press conference after what? After a loss.
Yeah.
Because you want to hear what the coaching staff had to say. You want to hear how the players respond, things like that. You get more out of a losing press conference than you do a winning one. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I look forward on Mondays to hearing 35 minutes of what Coach Rule has to say, because he always surprises me. Now, will that be the case, next year, a year from
2,
now?
3, 4, who knows?
Who knows? But I think I'll still find myself listening, just because I always feel like I get something out of it.
For sure. And that's pretty uncommon in this industry with press conferences. You usually
100%. You also get coaches too that don't even want to speak that long.
Yes.
It's a challenge.
How many coaches do you know that speak for 35 minutes every week?
Yeah,
there are coaches out there that are like, I'm not standing up here for more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes max. Coach Rule's giving you double time.
Yeah, I mean, there's some coaches you could go an entire month of these Monday pressers and barely get to 35 minutes, because what's that, like 8, 9 minutes a pop? That's about what a lot of these guys give you. I appreciate the amount of time he's willing to give the media, because it's not just giving time to people in our industry. It's also, I think he views it, and I view it this way, he's giving time to the fans. He's giving time to the people of the state that invest in his program.
It's also easier to talk to somebody, like ask a question to somebody that's willing to give an answer no matter what.
Yeah.
And will be like,
and you get better questions because of it.
You'll be a person about it, and instead of being like a Bill Belichick or possibly a Jim Harbaugh who can get a little like snarky, or
even like
make
Saban gets really snarky.
Yeah. Like some of the old Dabo Sweeney gets snarky. Like you have guys that
we know Dabo gets snarky.
You have guys that are harder to ask questions to, which is why those press conferences don't last as long. But because you get somebody so transparent in Coach Rule, and somebody that at least treats you well, no matter if the question is dumb or not. Because there are dumb questions out there. I mean,
listen,
I've asked a dumb question before.
There was a question at media days this year, I think from a Michigan State reporter, that was totally bizarre and off the wall and had nothing.
He still answered.
And not only did he answer it, he answered it great. I think it was about, or no, it was a Wisconsin person, because there was a shooting in Wisconsin.
Yep.
And last year,
correct.
And Nebraska prayed on the field afterward. And he obviously had nothing to do with that, because he was not here.
Only did he have nothing to do with it, it had nothing to do with the season that Nebraska was putting together.
And it had nothing to do with Nebraska, because the thing didn't happen. It happened the week before Nebraska was there. And even in that moment, he found something that he could answer and give that person kind of a moment.
He easily could have just said, like,
I wasn't here. I really can't speak to that.
Or like, what kind of question's that?
Yeah.
Like he could have just come out and just been frank and just said exactly that.
Be like, I don't understand what you're asking me. Like,
Or like, how about we stick to this season? Moving on, go ahead, Sam, or whatever.
Hey, I wasn't here. I really don't have a comment. Like, but
am I answering your full question?
Even in that moment, which is, to be fair, and nothing against this lady who asked the question, one of the worst questions I've heard in a press conference, just because it was so far from anything that had to do with Coach Rule, right? It just was not super relevant. But the way he approaches the media and press conferences is he not only allows for people to have the safety to ask bad questions, but because of that, you get way better questions because people aren't afraid to ask him things. But aside from the philosophical part of, I wanted to get to some Tony White stuff here. I thought the most interesting thing Tony White said yesterday was that he regretted his lack of aggressiveness against Michigan State, which I kind of, you see that in the game. You're like, man, I wish they were getting more pressure. I wish they were being, getting, maybe sending some plus rushers on some of these pass attempts.
Let's get that straight. That's bull crap.
And you just, and you watch it and you're like, man, I really wish they were getting more pressure on the quarterback, and they're just not getting there. And then he calls it out. He's like, hey, that's on me. Like, I should have been more aggressive.
Yeah, the ownership that this staff takes on the dissatisfaction of what they saw or see is
unlike thing about him.
Unlike any other.
It's my favorite thing about the staff.
The hell out of me.
It's just the ownership, right? And look, you talk about like not playing aggressive defensively. Like, this defense still played well.
Yeah.
They just didn't play elite or really, really good like we've seen in weeks before.
They didn't get that big play. They didn't get the turnover.
And what, you allowed 2 more chunk plays than you normally do?
Yeah, 2 or 3 tops. Yeah.
Yes, they resulted in touchdowns this time, or a couple of them did.
Or extending drives that allowed touchdowns,
But they weren't horrible.
No.
The defense was still the bright spot of the weekend.
The only bright spot of the weekend.
There were plays they got beat, but let's not blame them for the defeat.
Yeah, you're not going, when we talk about going 1-0 every snap, you're not going undefeated for a game on defense, right? People are going to get yards. People are going, most likely, most weeks, to score points, right? But I appreciate that. And it wasn't just, hey, I should have been more aggressive. He really went into depth about, like, I need to trust these guys in order to be more aggressive. And he's like, I talked about a couple of weeks ago that we need to play a little bit more like loose and free, and I really need to unleash these guys. And he took that upon himself, say, hey, if I want him to play like that, I have to play call like that. And he called himself out, which I didn't hear a question that led directly to that, in the sense of, like,
yeah, it's almost like, when you're something's eating you up.
Yeah.
Right.
It seemed like
you lied to your parents and you're like, I just have to come clean. Like, that's how Coach White was feeling in that moment. Like, I just have to say what's on my heart right now, because it's just not gonna make me feel better, but it's just gonna.
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's the right thing to say in the moment. What I really liked from him,
I mean, exactly,
and not only just that quote, but I liked what he said about takeaways, because I've been asking about takeaways, how they go from a good defense to an elite defense, and we had mentioned that if they can get more takeaways or something in the turnover department, you could probably get there. And I was really comfortable with his answer. So he had mentioned they come in waves, and we just don't have enough time to really get to the quote and respond to it. But we can play it throughout the show. Shane, it's White 8 if you want to mark it.
Man, live with that, bro. That's playing ball. I ain't tripping.
It had me thinking, how often is this defense in position for a takeaway? Like, are they on the field long enough for a takeaway, 1? Or 2, are there enough balls that are thrown that can either turn into interceptions, or are there enough plays that, you can punch the football out? And I mean, some of that's luck, right? A majority of the time, like, punching a football out for a fumble is
whether
luck.
or not you recover it,
right?
Is certainly,
But look, this team is still 16th in total defense. They're 13th in sacks. So, like, they're not pressing down the field a lot. And whenever a team's on 3rd and long, what do they tend to do? They're not throwing it. They're trying to just make up some yards so that they don't turn the ball over, say, in their own territory. They're 12th in first downs allowed. They're 99th in red zone defense, but the attempts are only 25.
Yeah.
So that stat is a little bit skewed. Rushing defense, they're 3rd. Passing efficiency defense, they're 30th.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, Georgia is tied for 44th in turnover margin with 11 gained. Nebraska has 10.
More Hurrdat Sports coming up next.
We will be back.